This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
What's up, Real MVPs, Ricky Widmer here, along with the one, the only, Brandon Swanson.
Hey.
Have not been able to say that in quite some time on this podcast. You may be thinking, guys, is this 2019? Because I have not seen this lineup on a PTP in quite some time. It's like the Obi-Wan Kenobi. I haven't heard that name in quite a long time. Brandon, how does it feel to be back here on the PTP for our first NFL mock draft of the season?
Yeah, it feels good, Ricky. Thanks for having me back and not completely casting me to the side and out into the cold all by myself. I appreciate it.
I know you won't get this reference, but it's like shun you like Jon Snow, send you to the Night's Watch, and then forget about you.
Yeah, you're right. I don't get the reference.
Did not get that at all. But welcome into our first NFL mock draft of the year. This is, to me, Christmas is one of the most exciting times of the year, but draft time is also the most wonderful time of the year, and we've already started the journey on the PTP earlier this week, the NBA one that Sean, Dave, and I did. Brandon and I are starting the NFL journey today of the mock draft. How we've done it in weeks past or years past is one way. We're actually changing things up a little bit for this year. So for this year, last year, we would have both given a mock. This year, it's pretty much I'm giving the mock. Brandon, I'm just bringing you in to basically be some analysis with me. So I'm just not talking to a camera in my room and then just basically being lonely the entire time. I need to talk to people from time to time. But before we get into the mock draft, make sure to check us out, patreon.com/mostvaluablepodcast. If you like these mocks, want to see more of them, want to see more of the podcasts we do, that's how you help support us. And hey, $10 tier, you can join a podcast and talk to us about whatever it is you would like to talk about. But Brandon, let's get into it. We'll start 1 through 10. I'll go ahead and give my mock before we start. Number 1, the Cincinnati Bengals. They're going with Tua Tagovailoa, quarterback out of Alabama. I think it's pretty easy for them. The Redskins at number 2 will then go Chase Young, edge rusher out of Ohio State. The Jets then go Andrew Thomas, offensive tackle from the Georgia Bulldogs. Number 4, the Miami Dolphins. They have 3 picks. With the first one, they go Joe Burrow, the quarterback out of LSU. Then the Falcons, they really wanted Chase Young, couldn't get him at 5, so they're going to go Jerry Jeudy, wide receiver out of Alabama, and have 3 Alabama wide receivers on their roster now. The Giants will go Grant Delpit, safety out of LSU. Browns go with maybe a little bit of a reach, but they need some offensive line help. They'll go Tristan Wirfs out of Iowa, also Iowa Hawkeye fans. I looked on YouTube on how to say Tristan's last name. If I'm saying it wrong, correct me. The Buccaneers at 8 go with Justin Herbert, the quarterback out of Oregon. Broncos at 9 go Derek Brown, DT, out of Auburn. And then the Raiders, with their first pick, this one via the Bears, they're going to go with Jeff Okudah, the cornerback out of Ohio State. And when I got to Jeff's name right there, Brandon, you do that thing where you saw me. I pulled up a video, and I was like, shit, how do you say that name? How do you say it? I hope I said it right. Jeff Okudah, I hope, is the way to pronounce it. But what we're going to do for the top 10 at least, same thing we did for the NBA. We're going to go through each one, kind of look at each team, kind of talk about what they could do, as this is the first time we're looking at these teams. The Bengals are pretty much the hot topic, number 1. Here's the question that I have for you about the Bengals, because for me, they were going to go with quarterback. I mean, you don't sit Andy Dalton unless you're going to draft a quarterback this year in the draft. Is it going to be Tua Tagovailoa, though, when we get to the draft in May or in April? Or is there a chance Joe Burrow could be that quarterback? Like, for you, which quarterback do you think the Bengals should be looking at? Or obviously they're going to scout both, but which one do you like better at this point, Tua or Joe Burrow?
So let me say something that I thought was really interesting is that so on Sundays getting ready for football and then to monitor my fantasy football team and yell at the TV later on in the afternoon, I really like to watch the Fox pregame show with Kurt Menefee,
So Hurt on that?
Terry Bradshaw. Yes. So he's on the earlier one.
Yeah.
And then this is Terry Bradshaw, Kurt Menefee, Howie Long, Strahan, and Jimmy Johnson. So they went around the table. They had a little table discussion, round table discussion, and Kurt Menefee said, okay, who would be first pick in the draft? Who are you going with? Terry Bradshaw first said Chase Young. And then everyone else went quarterback. And everyone else said Justin Herbert.
Wow.
None of them.
So not even Joe Burrow.
None of them even mentioned Joe Burrow. And when I think it was Menefee that brought up Tua, it was Howie Long that said, Tua's ankles worry me. So that is what makes this very interesting. Will other teams be saying the same thing? Because now back-to-back years, Tua has been outstanding. He's been very good. But he has had an ankle injury. And right now, he's still a game-time decision for Saturday's game against LSU, possibly the biggest game that Alabama plays all season long. Possibly, and if they don't make the playoff, which almost seems to be an unthinkable thing, and we all know that the committee will put them in there for one reason or another.
Even if they win or lose this game.
Win or lose, they're still going to get in, don't worry. But I thought that was very interesting. So now people would say, Brandon, what do you think? I think Tua is a very, very special talent. In my opinion, he's the first pick in the draft.
So that's who we're going to hear in April.
And if maybe not, are the Cincinnati Bengals going to be the first pick in the draft?
Let's say they are.
Okay.
Who would you go with? Like
Tua.
So you're going Tua if you're the Bengals.
Tua.
You don't even give a thought to anyone else.
Of course you give a thought to somebody else, but you asked who I went with.
Yeah.
I would go with
Good
Tua.
point. Here's the thing that I like. I think this is going to be a hard decision. I'm actually shocked that they said Justin Herbert because it's not that I don't like Justin Herbert. To me, watching his film last year, because I really dove into him last year when he was going to be a prospect before he pulled out, I was watching it and I'm like, wow, he reminds me a lot of Cam Newton. Like the way he runs, the way he throws the ball. Like I was getting a lot of Cam Newton vibe. I don't know. Like if he would have came out last year, he would have been arguably 1 or 2 for quarterback. But I think with Tua, I think the big thing is, has he been tested so far at Alabama? Where the biggest test he's had is Clemson, but he hasn't been he hasn't been successful in that battle. Like losing last year to Trevor Lawrence, who was a true freshman, where it was basically Trevor Lawrence walked in. It was like, oh, you're the big man on campus? Flip his blonde hair. That's cute. I'm going to go and win this game. And like Trevor Lawrence lit the league up on fire last year. Of course, we're seeing a different Clemson, a different Trevor Lawrence this year. But Tua to me is he's got the arm strength. He doesn't rely on it. But is it because of just Alabama's really good? And would Tua be just as good if he was on a different team? Would they be winning as much if he was on a different team? I look at Joe Burrow, and I made this connection when I talked about him on this podcast about a week or two ago. I think we're going to have a similar situation we saw to Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold, where Tua is the Sam Darnold of this draft. Joe Burrow, I think, is the Baker Mayfield. And when I say that, many people weren't thinking Joe Burrow at the beginning of the year. Now he's at the top of many people's big boards.
So neither of them are good? Neither of them will be good?
I mean, I'm
trying to draw a little conclusion there, and the conclusion is they both suck.
I'm speaking draft-wise, where Sam Darnold, everyone, when we were talking those 5 quarterbacks, everybody was like, well, Sam Darnold's the best quarterback in this draft. Even when Baker, like, not even Baker going number 1, even when it was like Josh Rosen may be number 1, everyone would say, well, Sam Darnold's the better talent, but they'll probably go with Rosen.
Josh Rosen, number 1. Were those people smoking some bad crack?
We were all smoking some crack back then.
I wasn't.
Brandon's like, I never liked him in the first place.
No!
But that's what I think. Tua is the one where people are going to go, oh, he's the better talent. Joe Burrow is going to be that guy that grinds and has that chip on his shoulder, just like Baker did, and he's going to probably grind too. Like, that's why there's a discussion of who should be number one. The only thing this year is where does, like you said, where does Justin Herbert fit in? Because Justin Herbert's not the Josh Allen. It's not like he's from bumfuck Wyoming and it's like, oh, he's really good, but nobody watches his games. It's not like he's the Josh Rosen. He plays in the Pac-12 like Josh Rosen, but he's completely different to Josh Rosen, where I almost wouldn't be surprised if Burrow and Herbert went above Tua, but I don't think that's going to happen.
So with Tua, I know you said that the only real test that he has had is Clemson, and I would disagree with that. I mean, I think he's tested in the years that he's had. He's been tested certainly he was tested against Georgia in the national championship game a couple of years back, and I think that's. I mean, that's legitimate. I mean, it wasn't a full game for him, but it was a second half.
You're talking the one he walked in and won it.
Yeah, and he didn't just, throw one pass, and it was a miraculous pass. The pass he did throw was, but he brought them that championship because of the second half that he had.
Yeah.
And then he's had a couple of, now games against, I understand, Clemson, Georgia, LSU. Hopefully he'll be playing in the game this weekend for another one against LSU. So he has had some tests, and I get it that but you could say that about every one of these quarterbacks that you look at and you go, okay, well, how many good teams are they playing every single week? And we know it. I mean, in the NFL, you're playing an NFL team every single week, just as we saw last week. When we saw the Jets game and the Dolphins game, it was a game between who wanted to be a bigger loser at the end of it, and it came out to be the Jets. It's like the Dolphins still have very, very good, talented NFL caliber players who are being paid millions of dollars to go out onto that field and win. So that's different. That is different than what you get in college, where playing Mercer is nowhere even close to playing LSU. Yeah. And I understand that playing the Dolphins is nowhere close to playing the Patriots, but their talent, they still have NFL caliber talent. Those guys made it there for a reason. For Mercer and LSU or Mercer and Alabama, come on.
I think this quarterback race is going to be interesting going forward, and if the Bengals are number one, it's going to be basically who are they going to go with, and is it going to be everyone what we expect them to do? Like we expected the Browns, hey, go with Darnold. Like Darnold, there was even some people like me that were like, no, go with Saquon Barkley. Could you imagine if the Browns actually listened to me and went Saquon Barkley and then a quarterback at 4? Like they would have been fine. They would have also had Saquon, but I mean, Nick Chubb's been good.
I was in that same
Were you?
boat.
I can't remember.
I thought I was.
Then
I don't know.
We both were.
I'd have to go back and look at the tape.
But the thing I want to do to move on is the next team in the Redskins. This is, to me, it was an easy pick, but a hard pick. Because if the Redskins are at 2, the question I'm going to ask you is right now, the 3 biggest needs that this team would need in the offseason is somebody to block for Dwayne Haskins and just the offense in general, a cornerback, or a pass catcher.
Or a new quarterback.
I know you really don't like Dwayne Haskins.
As we know, we have a joint
Redskins is not real
franchise, and it's
Brandon
the Redskins and Dwayne Haskins. Madden needs to either adjust some ratings there or whatever because he sucks in that game. But he actually did have a better game against the Bills. I don't think he turned the ball over. They still lost by plenty, 26-9, so 17 points. But, I think that for the Redskins,
because I have a question for them that I wanted to throw your way.
Oh, okay. I thought you. Never mind.
If you're the Redskins, because to me this was, if I'm sitting here making the pick, it's an easy pick in my mind. Chase Young. You take the best talent available. He's a pass rusher. Get after the quarterback. But then there's a thought that enters my head: is if you're the Redskins, do you try to do what John Lynch did back when Mitch Trubisky was drafted?
Try and fleece a team?
Do you, and I'm going to set up the situation. Do you try to get, let's say the order is what it is right now. Do you try to get the Dolphins to give you the 4th, and I'll say the 25th? I'll go with their 3rd of their first-round picks. They got 3 of them. Do you try to get 2 of their first-round picks, the 4, and then either right now it'd be the 17 or the 25. I'll say the 25 because that one may be more manageable. Do you try to get 2 of those first-round picks to get the Dolphins to move up for a quarterback, just like the Niners did when the Bears needed a quarterback? And then if you're the Redskins, yeah, you're moving down from 2 to 4, but even if the Jets take Chase Young, you didn't really need an edge rusher. Then a guy like Andrew Thomas is there for you. That's a bigger need. And then later on in the draft, when you get to 25, you can hit either an edge rusher or maybe a wide receiver, maybe a cornerback that's there. What do you do if you're the Redskins?
Then can I ask you a question? I don't mean
Sure,
this to be rude.
Go ahead.
Then why did you put Chase Young there for them?
Because if I am picking at number 2, I'm taking BPA. I'm taking the best player available.
But that doesn't make any sense.
Okay.
And I'm not saying for you, I'm saying that would make no sense for the Washington Redskins, a team that's really struggled, not only this year, but for a number of years now. They shouldn't be taking the best player available. They should be taking the best player available at the position that they need the most. And I think one of the positions they need the most, if not the position they need the most, is offensive line.
Okay.
They're horrible.
So you're saying take Andrew Thomas at number 2, even if Chase Young is there?
I would.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I don't need Chase Young. Chase Young is not going to win me games.
Because their edge rushers right now, they have Jonathan Allen. They take Montez Sweat was a guy they took last year. And then they also got, obviously, Ryan Kerrigan, who's their big veteran on the outside of that linebacking core.
That offensive line needs help because what's going to win you games is your quarterback.
Yeah.
And right now, your quarterback doesn't have, any weapons.
Brandon's like, I know. I play with them in Madden.
It's frustrating. You have no time. I think we're the most sacked team in the league in the game. And it's not us. You know, we are doing our very best to be good in that game. But on a serious note, they need more help on the line. They need more help in opening up some holes for their running backs to go through. Now, Adrian Peterson's been having a couple of good games lately, getting over 100 yards. But he's doing a lot of that on his own.
Yeah. And
then you look at Dwayne Haskins, and the poor fella needs some time, and he needs some help. I mean, he's a young guy. He's going to take some more developing, and he's going to take some more time in his reads and things like that. So you need to have more weapons on the offensive line. I mean, look at the amount of money, and I don't know, I think you said you were watching the game on Monday Night Football.
Yeah, I was.
Was that they did a stat, and I can't remember the stat exactly, that came up for the Dallas Cowboys, where the Dallas Cowboys have put so much money into their offensive line. But it's one of the best in the league.
Yeah.
Most of the money that the Dallas Cowboys pay their players
so good.
is in their offensive line. Most of the money locked up in their players is the O-line. And that's why Zeke is so good. That's why the Dallas Cowboys and Dak Prescott are able to be so effective on play action pass, because there's actually time to play action and then pass and be able to find somebody down the field with some time. It's that offensive line. And I don't want to take anything away from Zeke or Dak. They're great players, but they're better because of that O-line, guys like Zach Martin, etc. And that's what the Redskins need right now to be able to protect their quarterback and open up some holes for their running backs to be able to make some plays and win some games.
And that's why in this situation, I mean, let's be honest, I could have done trades. This is my mock, but usually I reserve trades until later on.
You do trades later on where it's the picture starts to...
Exactly. This early, it's like, even doing this mock, it was like, as we get later in the mock, it's going to be like, well, really, they could go this, but it depends on like, oh, this person may leave,
Absolutely.
but is he going to leave? Or what do they get in free agency? That like, it plays itself out. It's why I like the NFL better than the NBA in the sense that I always feel like free agency should come before the draft. Whereas in the NFL, you go through free agency, you get your pick of the veterans, and okay, my lineup is pretty set. Where do I fit in these rookies? Where the NBA is completely different. Let me draft the rookies and then hope I get the free agents that I want to go get. If I'm the Redskins, I would have put a trade in here if I did trades, because if I'm the Redskins and I'm number 2, I'm calling up the Dolphins. I'm saying, hey, you need a quarterback, even if I had to lie to them and say, and I'm going to say like John Lynch, because although I wasn't in the room, I'm going to be completely honest. Nobody was fucking calling him for that pick. Whatever he told the Bears about teams calling him for that pick to get Mitch Trubisky, nobody was calling him because nobody wanted Mitch at the top. I know how Sean and Dave were like, oh, but remember, everyone was high on Mitch. I was high on Deshaun Watson. He was the top of my board quarterback-wise, and I'm going to hang my hat on that until the day I die. But
it'll be on your tombstone. I was high on Deshaun Watson.
Patrick Mahomes wasn't even in my first round, though. But hey, sometimes you get shocked. I'm the Redskins. I'm calling the Dolphins, trying to get 2 of those first-round picks. And if I'm the Dolphins, maybe they do it because, hey, they really need a quarterback. And if they like Herbert, if they like Burrow, whichever one they like, they can get that. Then even if the Jets take Chase Young, Andrew Thomas is there at 4. I can get then Andrew Thomas at 4, and then let's say I'll still use the 25th pick just because I think it's a more reasonable package. Then at the 24th pick, I can get maybe a cornerback. I can get a wide receiver that I really like. I could then go BPA if I really want and get an edge rusher if I feel like I need it. So, I mean, the Redskins could be a prime team this year where we talk about them trading that pick rather than going ahead and picking it and, like you say, making the dumb move by going with BPA that they just don't need at this point. Let's move on to the Jets, though. If you are the Jets, obviously pass rusher is a big need. Is this a no-brainer? If Chase Young's off the board and a quarterback's off the board, is Andrew Thomas the guy you go with? Is their main priority should be either Chase Young or protecting Sam Darnold? Should that be the process of elimination for the Jets with their top 5 pick?
I would say yet again that for the New York Jets, there's 2 ways that I look at the Jets.
Or is this a Jerry Jeudy sighting?
I was just going to say, this is the way that I look at the Jets. You either need to add someone else to that offensive line, or you need to add another weapon for Darnold to throw to.
Yeah.
That is simple for me. So
Robbie Anderson's their leading
Robbie
receiver?
Anderson is their leading wide receiver. Even though I think Jamison Crowder is a close second, if he maybe isn't first, because he gets more looks, I think, than Anderson, but Anderson just has more bigger plays.
Yeah.
But for the Jets, I mean, they go out and they sign Le'Veon Bell, 3-year, $60 million deal in the offseason, and then almost trade him. But
great minds think alike.
They do. That's very true. But here's the problem, though, is that Le'Veon Bell, he's a great talent. We know it.
Yeah.
He's gone over to the Jets, and his numbers have just plummeted. He can't get any space.
Yeah.
They're not using him the same way because Darnold doesn't know what to do because he doesn't have any time. Everyone's covered. I mean, it is a mess
You want to know
over
what
in
their
New York.
problem is? You know who their OC is, right? Dow Loggins. You know how he works so well here in Chicago?
That's why he's not here anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
So well, we just let him go to better pastures.
He's an Adam Gase guy. He follows Adam Gase wherever he goes.
And Adam Gase, not that good of a coach.
Yeah, maybe not good head coach. Should be an OC kind of a thing.
I think we're starting to see that. The Dolphins were able to tell the Jets, hey, guys, good for you for getting a new head coach, but we tried it, not good. But again, getting back to the Jets and their needs, I really think that when you look at them, though, I want to say offensive line, but at the same time, I also want to say, okay, let's go through all the options for Sam Darnold to be able to throw to. Le'Veon Bell out of the backfield, Robbie Anderson, Jamison Crowder, Quincy Enunwa when he's healthy,
Herndon.
and Herndon, the tight end. Those are underwhelming at very best.
And they even traded for Demaryius Thomas. I mean, he's technically on the roster.
You know how sad? I don't even think of him.
Exactly. Exactly. He's technically on the roster.
And he has gotten catches. Mm-hmm. But this is a roster offensively that is so sad.
Yeah.
And it needs some life. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people thought, okay, Sam Darnold, there's the life. And then it was like, he's okay, but we need a little bit more. We need to get him some weapons. Mm-hmm. So then they go out and they get Le'Veon Bell. All right, now we've got some life. We've got Darnold and we've got Le'Veon Bell. And now Jets fans are going, maybe we have to wait till week 10 for that life to come, but it's not coming. And I think that's where the Jets, you said the name, Jerry Jeudy is an outstanding option, a great receiver, and a guy who could very much make a difference on this team as another electric weapon for Sam Darnold to be able to go to, and another guy that you can create some really good schemes with him. I mean, you can do some stuff in the backfield with Jerry Jeudy. I mean, you can get him some jet sweeps. You can do all that type of stuff. He's, in my opinion, he's very Calvin Ridley-esque, and to me, but and I think Calvin Ridley is very, very good too. And they all are from Alabama, so it just all it's like. But
it's the same kind of receiver there. It's just all the same.
Wide receiver, you. But I think
USC might get mad at you for that one. I think they call themselves wide receiver U.
Yeah, when have they been freaking good lately? You can only be, if you want to call yourself wide receiver U, you have to be good.
Yeah, I think they're wide receiver U, and then UCLA calls themselves linebacker U.
Even though I know Alabama is running back U, they're pretty much everything U at this point. But so, again, for all people that might be out there going, Brandon, you're completely wrong.
Good thing you brought that up. I want the people at home, count the Alabama players in my first round right now, because there's a lot of them. There are. Like, when we get to the end of my mock draft, there are going to be a ton of Alabama players, which I'm going to hear live on the podcast. Commend you, Brandon Swanson, as you're looking at the logo right now. Brandon up until this point. So our camera is a DSLR camera, so that means it's stupid. It's not stupid. It's a really nice camera. But it only can record in 30-minute intervals, and then it stops, and we got to get up and restart it. And I never had taught Brandon, like, what to actually do and what to touch, so that if I'm talking, like, he could go up and do it, and if he's talking, I can go up and do it. But kudos to Brandon every single time so far on this podcast or What's Your Fantasy. I even had to get up once. I was even looking. I'm like, okay, while Brandon's talking, I'm going to see. We're getting close to it. And Brandon doing a phenomenal job here on the podcast. But what I was saying with the Alabama players is I've got a ton of them. So when we get through 32, I will then say how many I have. But at home, I want you counting along. Jerry Jeudy to me is just an interesting one. Because you brought him up, I'll bring this up. Is I could see the Jets taking him. I could see the Dolphins taking him if they don't go quarterback for some reason. I could see the Falcons taking him. I could see the Giants taking him. Browns probably not. I could see the Bucks taking him, the Broncos taking. Like, he's a guy where when we get to April, I don't know where he's going to be for sure. I don't know if he's going to be where we think he's going to be, or if he's going to be a prime candidate of, oh, these teams don't really need the wide receiver, or don't value the wide receiver that high on their war big boards. So he's the one that just goes boop and falls a little bit. And it's like, oh, I thought he'd go 4 or 5. Oh, but he went 6 or 7 instead.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a guy that could happen only because depending on which teams are where and what their greatest need ends up being.
Because this order is obviously going to change.
It will. It definitely will. Maybe not significantly, but it will. Who knows? The Falcons might find themselves at number 1 because they seem really good at losing consistently these days.
All top 5 teams have, everyone except the Bengals. Bengals have no wins. 2 through 5 all have 1 win. You've got 6 through 8 all have 2 wins. So right now, we're kind of congested a little bit. and hopefully this thing kind of like spreads out as the bad teams start playing each other, like the Frutility Bowl, which will be the Bengals versus the Dolphins, of who wants to lose that game for a higher draft pick. But yeah, the Jets to me are a team where I went with offensive line only because it's like protecting the quarterback is so important.
But it makes sense. I mean, and they need it.
But like they could all, like Jerry Jeudy was one where I'm like, I could see him going here. That leads into the Dolphins. And I've got a dual question for you.
Sure.
The first one, this is kind of the opposite side to the Redskin question. If you're the Dolphins in this situation and you have the 4th pick, the 17th pick via the Steelers, and the 25th pick right now via the Texans, do you think about jumping the Jets to go to 2 to get the quarterback that you want, thinking that maybe someone's going to try to trade with the Redskins to get a quarterback? Or are you a team that goes, whatever, if someone trades for a quarterback, there's enough of them here that I'm going to get a quarterback here at 4?
See, and I think that that's what they would probably do, because the Dolphins, they've been aggressive.
They just need bodies, is what you're saying?
They've been aggressive in terms of stockpiling these draft picks. And I think that they have gotten, obviously, 3 in the first round. I think they're going to be content being there at 4, where, okay, they're not going to get maybe, and I don't even want to say the number 1 quarterback, depending on who it ends up being and what they go with. But if their final 2 options were between Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert, I don't think you're losing there. I really don't. So if you have them going and drafting Joe Burrow, I don't think that that's going to be a bad thing. Joe Burrow has exploded this season. Exploded this season. He's been outstanding. The amount of games where he's had 300 yards, 5 touchdowns, 6 touchdowns, not turning the football over, and LSU has been a absolute dominant force this year. And this is one of the first years that as an Alabama fan, I'm really worried for Saturday. And I would be worried even if Tua was completely healthy, because LSU looks really good.
Do you think LSU gets the win? I'll just ask you right here on the podcast.
If
you had to put your money on it, which one are you putting your money on?
If Tua does not play,
I
think LSU wins.
What if he does?
I think Alabama does.
Okay.
I think
so it's kind of that.
Tua is a huge factor when it comes down to it. Huge factor.
I can't wait for it, though.
It's going to be good. I do like, though, with the Dolphins right here, Joe Burrow, that's it. And they need it. We all know that Rosen's not going to be the guy. We knew that from his time in Arizona. Certainly when I say we, I mean myself. He's not panned out. And, Fitzpatrick's going to be done here soon. They're going with the quarterback. He'll be the starter next season. So
here's the other side to it. The second question I was going to ask you, and before I ask you, I'll kind of give my thought on it, is the Dolphins have 3 picks. First off, both of their quarterbacks that they have right now are locked up for next year. They have Ryan Fitzpatrick on contract for $5.5 million next year. They got Josh Rosen for 2 more years after this at $2 million and $2.8 million. And I know what you're saying, Ricky. They could easily cut Ryan Fitzpatrick. They could eat that cap hit that they would take, or they could also trade Josh Rosen for a 2nd rounder, 3rd rounder, like the Cardinals did. But depending how this draft plays out, my mock played out a certain way, where obviously Chase Young was off the board, Andrew Thomas was off the board. We need a quarterback. I'm going to go ahead and take one, and just Joe Burrow. It's a competition next year between you and Josh. Whoever wins the job wins the job. However, let's say what you were saying kind of plays out. Let's say the Redskins shock us. They go with Andrew Thomas. So I'll kind of over on the other side really quick. So you have said to this point Tua number 1. Then you threw out Andrew Thomas to the Redskins. And then you threw out Jerry Jeudy to the Jets. That means Chase Young is there at 4. There could be a situation where the Dolphins, and Andrew Thomas is available, a Chase Young is available. Hey, we're not going to go quarterback at 4. We're going to go with a Chase Young. We're going to go with an Andrew Thomas because guess what? We got 17 and 25 to either take a quarterback then or do what we've seen so many other teams do. Hey, we're going to move up in the draft. We're going to use those other picks. We're going to use one of those other picks and some of our later picks to move up in the draft. So the thing I would ask you is, like, if you're the GM of the Dolphins, are you hell-bent on taking a quarterback at 4? Or because you've stockpiled these picks, are you going to say, hey, if Chase Young's there, we take him. If Andrew Thomas is there, we take him. Because maybe I can move up in the draft to get a Justin Herbert or a Jalen Hurts. Or, hey, there's a possibility a Jalen Hurts, a Jake Fromm is there at 17, and we go ahead and get that because we still have Josh Rosen and Fitzpatrick on the roster for this year. Is it a for sure that the Dolphins are going to go quarterback with their first round pick in this year's draft?
I think it should be.
Okay.
I think it should be because I don't dislike Ryan Fitzpatrick. I don't think he's a bad quarterback, but he's not going to be their franchise quarterback.
He's not the future.
We know it.
Yeah.
But neither is Rosen. Neither is Rosen.
You're saying Rosen was a nice experiment, but it's not going to work.
It hasn't.
Okay.
I mean, it hasn't because he's not starting. I mean, Brian Flores, the team of the crappy, the head coach of the crappy Miami Dolphins has come out and said that Ryan Fitzpatrick gives us a better chance to win.
But are you trying to win games at this point? That's my question.
Yes. I mean, I don't think that a team goes out there and tries to lose.
We live in the era of the tank, Brandon.
You're talking the
sport.
NBA. You're talking the NBA.
We even had the suck for luck when the Colts were going to get a quarterback. So like there's examples of fans and tanking in every sport. It's just prevalent. And it's easier. It's easier in the NBA. And also the lottery then fucks you.
The Dolphins have to go with a quarterback. They have to. Well, the Dolphins really have to go for
with
every position, but
with their first pick of the draft.
Absolutely,
okay.
They do. In my mind, you have to, because to get this franchise on track, you need the franchise guy. You haven't gotten him yet. You don't have him currently.
It's
you
why
need
the
to
Browns
draft him now.
went with Baker and didn't go with Saquon like we said.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah. So, I mean, also, I'll look at it this way then, because the Dolphins, we're not going to take a look at them with their other picks. I wanted to just kind of lump those all in right now. In your mind, so you're going quarterback with the 4th overall, 17 and 25. In your mind, what should the Dolphins do with those other picks? Should they try to trade up for somebody? Should they use those strategically? Should they, because one of the things I talked about was on a past podcast is, do they try to get a guy like Jonathan Taylor who could be available? They might need a running back. Do they just go, hey, we need offensive line and edge rusher, and we're going to go quarterback, offensive line, edge rusher, whoever's the best available there? What do you think they do with those other 2 picks?
So I like where you have what you have them doing with the 17th pick and going Jonathan Taylor, because they do need a running back, and that's another thing that's been hurting them. Not only do they need a running back, but they need to have someone in there that knows how to effectively use the running back. Kenyon Drake was just grossly underutilized at Miami. I don't know why. I don't understand it, but he was with Adam Gase. He has been with Brian Flores, and now clearly he finds himself in Arizona. In his first game with the Cardinals, he goes off against a 49ers defense that's supposedly supposed to stop everyone in the run, and they didn't. So I don't understand really what the problem is there in Miami, because they have too many to understand one fully. But Jonathan Taylor, I think, is a really great pick there. My other thought is, okay, they traded Minkah Fitzpatrick to the Pittsburgh Steelers earlier this season. I think that leaves a hole there on the defensive side. How do you fill that?
Yeah.
How do you fill that? Who's a guy that you're looking at that could possibly take and fill the Minkah Fitzpatrick role that maybe isn't on the team already, most likely isn't on the team already, that could be able to take his spot, step in into those shoes and fill the Minkah Fitzpatrick spot?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because it depends on which pick you want to hit with that. And I'll say them here because I don't know Dolphin fans, since we're not talking about all of them in the other segments. The 2 picks that I had for the Dolphins at 17, as Brandon said, I had them go with Jonathan Taylor. And then with the 25th pick via the Texans, I had them go with Yetur Gross-Matos. I hope I said that right. Edge rusher from Penn State. And it's like, if you're looking for, because with Minkah Fitzpatrick, you'd be looking for more of a safety over a cornerback, right? So, I mean, if you're looking for more of a safety in that position, in my mind, it depends on where you want to attack that need, because there's a possibility. Now, he didn't fall for me, but he could be there potentially at 17, as in Isaiah Simmons, where really the big thing with him is what position is he going to play at the next level? Because right now he's kind of like that outside linebacker, safety, kind of a hybrid type of player where it's like he can play outside linebacker, he can rush the passer, but also he's good in coverage and can also stop the run with tackles for loss. So it's really, what are you going to use? What is going to be your plan for him? Or if you're going to go later with the 25th pick, again, another Alabama player, Xavier McKinney, their safety, could be a guy that you kind of go with if you're looking at it, because if you're the Dolphins, if you're not going to go with safety with the 4th overall pick because you're going quarterback, there's no way you're getting a Grant Delpit unless you're trading up for him and using both of those picks that you have in the first round to trade up for him, which I just don't see them doing.
But I also like Jonathan Taylor. This is a special running back.
Yeah.
I think people have known that for a long time, and he's been having an outstanding season with Wisconsin.
Yep.
And I think that when you look at this, he seemed to, when Wisconsin, it's really crazy because he seemed to be getting so much recognition when Wisconsin was winning, and I don't want to say that they're not still winning, but they've had Illinois and then Ohio State
until the Fighting Illini.
They have not been winning then, but he's still, Jonathan Taylor is still doing an outstanding job. I think this is going to be a very, very, very special running back coming out of there, and if the Dolphins were to get him, I'm sure they'll mightily misutilize him, so I almost hope they don't, but that would be a guy, if he's there, you go for him, because the Dolphins, defense is huge.
Yeah.
Defense is huge, but we've even seen the Tampa Bay Buccaneers be able to win without one. And it's because they have so many offensive weapons, and they're really not doing it from the running back position. That hasn't been their forte, but maybe they're starting to, and as head coach, whose name escapes me, is able to say that Ronald Jones is going to be the
Bruce Arians.
Bruce Arians, yeah. I don't know.
For a second, I didn't hear what team you said.
I pictured
Brian
him.
Flores.
No, I pictured him, but I couldn't think of his name. Clearly not that important. But he named Ronald Jones the starter, but not important. A little bit of a tangent there, but they have wide receivers for days. With Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, and then you've got Cameron Brayton, O.J. Howard, if they ever used him. But that's a team that's not that great defensively, but has a lot of offense. The Dolphins need to focus on being able to do one thing, on something on one side of the ball. Offense, I think, is where they should be putting most of their focus with, and that would make sense if they go quarterback and then with running back.
Well, let's move on. The 5th pick. I'm going to let you talk about this one, because this is one that I talked very recently on the podcast about what they could do with a top 5 pick. So go ahead and check that out. I'm just going to leave because none of my opinions have changed from that video, but I want to hear what you have to say with this next team, the Falcons. How I kind of laid it out is they have a ton of needs. Their first big one is pass rusher. Their leading sack artist right now, if you can even call it that, has a sack and a half. Oof. That's what it says on NFL.com. Oof is what they wrote in the article after that. They can go with edge rusher. They can go with a DB because Keanu Neal has now suffered an injury for 2 straight years. They can go with an offensive lineman because they need to help protect Matt Ryan, or they could also go for wide receiver help. I chose wide receiver help because I think going for a Tristan Wirfs would be a reach at this point. They could have went with Del Pitt. To me, went offense over defense there. And really, there's no edge rusher available if Chase Young isn't there for the Falcons at 5. What's your thought with the Falcons? What do you do at 5? Who's the guy that you're looking for? What's really this first pick? Or do they need to just tank so that they get into a position to where they can get Chase Young? Or do they have to trade up to get to him if they can't?
So this is where for the Falcons, and I really do love Jerry Jeudy. He's a speedster at 6'1". He's really outstanding. He makes a lot of plays. He's able to go and get the football. I mean, if you throw it up there, as Tua has numbers of times, he does it to Jerry Jeudy. He does it to Henry Ruggs. He's done it to many guys before him. And in Alabama, quarterbacks have done it to guys before him. He's a great talent. He'll go get it for you. And he makes big plays. He will electrify any offense. The Jets would love him. I do, though, with the Falcons and looking
at their roster,
at how they've been this year. So I really don't think anybody, and a lot of times people say, I don't think anybody, and there's clearly someone, but I really don't think anybody would have predicted this for the Atlanta Falcons this year.
No, we were talking about in the offseason how they could be a team that challenges for the NFC South crown this year. And many people had them as the second place team over the Carolina Panthers because of the whole Cam debacle. And is Cam going to play? Is he not going to play? Even if he does play, what kind of a Cam are we going to see?
I mean, I think people thought that, like you said, that this would be a team that was legitimately going against the Saints to win that division.
Yeah.
The Falcons have a lot of problems, but their biggest one is their defense. Their biggest one is their defense.
I mean, they were even shopping, what's his name? Vic Beasley at the trade deadline. Just nobody wanted him.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted him.
For me, the Falcons, the guy who they need to get is Chase Young. And at 5,
you're not getting him.
They probably are not. They probably are not going to get that man. So if I'm the Falcons, this is the first time where I would legitimately say, you try and trade up.
Okay.
If they are at 5, which we have them at today because of where they're at right now with their record, you trade up, you try and get him, because the defense is the biggest problem right now for the Atlanta Falcons. Matt Ryan, I'm sorry, he's not the problem. People can say it's him, but he's not the problem. Julio Jones, not the problem. Calvin Ridley, not the problem. Devonta Freeman, well, he's not necessarily the problem, but he's not helping. They also could probably look at running back, too, if you wanted to look on it from an offensive perspective. But the Falcons have a lot of offense. Their offense really is not the issue. The defense has given up so many points this season to so many teams that you're going, how? So that is where they really need to get pressure on the quarterback, and Chase Young would be that guy. And would they have to probably give up a pretty penny or two to be able to trade up to try and get him if that's where they end up falling, is still at 5 and not at 1 or 2? Yeah, you probably do, but is it worth it? And I think the answer to that is probably yes.
Yeah, and I mean, looking at their picks, they do have their second rounder. They also now have 2 second rounders because they got one from the Patriots as well. So, I mean, they've got some picks to work with if they want to trade up. And just to answer your question of what we thought in the preseason, technically, Sean and I could still be right. But in order for us to be right, the Falcons would have to go 8-0 the rest of the way. We had them as a 9-7 team. Sean had them 3rd in the South because he also had the Panthers at 9-7. I had them 2nd in the South because I had the Panthers at 7-9. So just to kind of go with your point of no one really thought that this was gonna be where the Falcons were even picking at this point in the draft. And I kind of agree with you. Like, Chase Young has to be that guy, but it's either you're going to tank for him or you're going to have to make a trade for him. It's going to have to be one of those two. Let's move on, though, to the Giants. I had them obviously going Grant Delpit. One of their needs is defensive back, but they could use an edge rusher and a lineman. Pretty much my thought process here is they could have went with Tristan Wirfs, but yet again, I even think that was a little bit of a reach for the Browns when I had him going a pick later. What's your thought with the Giants? Should they be looking defense and boostering that defense, looking for like an edge rusher? Not many here at the top of the draft besides Chase Young, looking for a safety, or should they be going offense and trying to protect Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley?
Well, after seeing how their defense did on Monday against the Cowboys, I would say that you're probably pretty good with going with a safety here from LSU. So I don't think that that's a bad pick at all, going with Delpit. That seems to make a lot of sense just because they are not good in the secondary. They really are not, and they're young. I mean, that's something. I mean, DeAndre Baker was picked on a lot the other night. DeAndre Baker's good.
Yeah.
I believe it, but he's also young, and in his first season, I believe, with the Giants.
Took him out of Georgia.
Right out of Georgia, yeah. So this is a young team, I think, for the Giants. I mean, that's where they're going because they were an old team. Now they're trying to move not trying to, but they're trying to move to a rebuilding team, and you usually have to go young to do that with some veterans there as well. They've got. Do they have Janoris Jenkins still?
Yes,
the Giants,
I believe they still do because I believe no one wanted him.
So that's where I think that defense needs to still continue to come along for the Giants.
Yes, they do. They still have Janoris Jenkins. Cornerbacks right now in their depth chart are Baker and Jenkins are leading the way, and then their backups are Antonio Hamilton and Grant Haley right now. But like I even look at them, and the thing that I even look at with their safeties too is they don't really, to me, have a guy that's like, yes, that's like they trade for Jabril Peppers. And I don't even think Jabril Peppers is the guy that's like, yeah, Jabril Peppers is our safety. It's kind of like he's the starter because one of the guys we have behind him, I know free safety, strong safety, they're different. But like they just drafted also Julian Love last year out of Notre Dame, which, as you said, same thing about Baker. Julian Love in his first year getting acclimated, not even the starter like Baker. So it's kind of like, hey, if you don't think Julian Love is going to be that guy, why not go back to the well, get a guy like Delpit, which I really like. Any cornerback that comes out of LSU usually has that toughness to play in the NFL. So that's kind of my thought process. How about the Browns? This is a team. We talked about it on What's Your Fantasy when we looked at Kareem Hunt. Didn't expect to be this high. They have enough talent to where nobody probably thought they were going to be in the top 10 of this draft. If Delpit was here, he would have been the pick for the Browns. But let's say, like my mock has, Delpit's off. You even got even Jerry Jeudy. I don't think they would go there.
They don't need more offense.
Is this an offensive line and just move on, or is it?
Yes.
Is there another position they could look at?
No, the offensive line is where I would go with, and I say that too because at the trade deadline, there are a lot of people linking them to what's his name, Trent Williams, over from the Redskins. They're looking for offensive line help, and the reason they're doing that is because again, their young quarterback Baker Mayfield, and Nick Chubb has been able to do a lot of really good things running with help from that offensive line, but Baker does not have time to throw the football, and that's a problem. So against the run, they're pretty good. Against the pass, they are really pathetic.
Yeah, and that was just with my thinking too of like, I put this in of Tristan Wirfs of Iowa, and I was like, it's kind of a reach. Like, he's not a top 10 prospect, but like I was looking at it and I'm like, they're not going to take, and like, they're not going to go quarterback. They don't need a guy like Derek Brown. They don't need, like, the guy I will say who fell that probably on a big board would be top 5 or even top 6, but is at 10, is Jeff Okunda. I probably said that wrong after I said it right earlier in the podcast, but he's a guy, fell to 10, but like, I wasn't going to put him here. They weren't going to take BPA and take him when offensive line is such a big need. So with the Browns, it was my kind of thought process of like, oh, I know it's kind of a reach, but they really need that offensive line, and why they went with Tristan out of Iowa. Number 8, the Bucs. I'm just going to ask you this, plain and simple. I've got Justin Herbert going there. Percentage, what are the odds that the Buccaneers move on from Jameis Winston and draft a quarterback this year? Or is this pick just typical Ricky hating Winston and ain't going to happen?
No, I think they have to move on. I do. I really do. I think that they have to move on because if you look at Jameis Winston, he's not the answer. Mm-hmm. He's not the answer. I mean, I think that's pretty clear. I mean, he's able to put together some good games, some good stat lines maybe for fantasy. Mm-hmm. But he's not the answer.
Yeah.
And I think the Buccaneers know that because Bruce Arians comes in and says, keep Jameis because I can fix him.
Yeah.
He's like the girl that wants to stay with the guy and says,
thinking the same thing. Oh, but I could
here's
fix him.
my project and I can fix him. Honey, no. That's not how it works.
It's like, why are you even with him? He treats you like garbage. Oh, but I can fix him. I can make him change. I can change him. I was thinking the same thing. As soon as you said he could fix him, I'm like, oh, it's like the girlfriend who thinks that she can fix him when she really can't. The thing that, and this plays into it too, that I think is going to be interesting for us moving forward in this draft process. Out of the top 10 teams, the Dolphins are 1, the Jets are 2, the Falcons are 3, the Giants are 4, the Bucs are 5, and even the Raiders at 10, I'm going to throw out our 6. 6 of the top 4 teams need edge rushing. But right now, who's the only edge rusher in the top 10? Chase Young. I wonder if 2 things are going to happen. One, what's going on here, and that, all right, there's not an edge rusher there, because remember early on, like in the preseason, we all thought A.J. Epenza out of Iowa was going to be like, ooh, he's going to be right up there, top 5, and because of the season Iowa's been having, he's kind of fallen down draft boards right now. That's why he's not in the top 10 of my mock draft. Maybe he gets boosted. Maybe Gross Matos from Penn State gets boosted as the process goes on because of the need for edge rushing. It's just, to me, interesting what's going to... Because if there was an edge rusher here, and if this draft was rich with edge rushers, then yeah, maybe the Buccaneers go edge rushing and they don't go Justin Herbert here. But with Chase Young really being the only edge rusher in the top 10 for me, I think it's kind of easy to say, hey, we need a quarterback. Justin Herbert is here in the mock. Let's go ahead and get him because, like, I agree with you. Jameis Winston is not the future in Tampa.
He's just not.
And Tampa fans, I love you guys. I love that you comment, but you're in denial. You're in denial when you tell me in the comment section, oh, well, Jameis is going to get it around. You just hate Jameis. No, he's not. He ain't what you think he is, and you're just trying to put lipstick on a pig at this point.
See, it's probably when you go out and you say that and they come in and defend him, and then that next Sunday he throws 5 picks and they go,
or he throws 5 touchdowns and they're immediately in the comment section going, see, I told you so. But I get it. I get it. Fans are fans. I still watch the Bulls, cheer for the Bulls, cheer for my teams that suck. even though they absolutely are dog shit. So it's like, I get it. I get what being a fan is. Let's round out this top 10. Number 9, the Broncos. Is this just another easy pick? You know, Broncos need interior defensive line, and with Derek Brown being there, is this the easiest pick in the book for the Broncos, or do you think, do they maybe try to go with a defensive back? Do they maybe go with a Jeff Okunda out of Ohio State? Do they try to go offensive lineman and probably reach at this point for that? What do you think Vic Fangio and the Broncos do at 9, and what's kind of the thought process of maybe what their team might need in the draft?
Let me ask you a question here, though.
Sure.
Is that the Denver Broncos right now, so obviously Joe Flacco is out for the season, and they're going with another stud quarterback behind him, Brandon Allen. Mm-hmm. And I say that facetiously.
Yeah, because he's not.
And
drafted out of Arkansas in, 2016?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my question would be, are the Denver Broncos flirting with a quarterback? Do they flirt with the idea? Do they consider it for a second?
I only want to say no because you drafted Drew. Like, part of me wants to say no because you drafted Drew Lock, but also there's a part of me, and of course this is from they've quoted a source here. So I'm looking at yardbarkers.com, which I'm like, this is not a creditable source, but they actually cite a creditable source where they say, according to 9 News in Denver, Drew Lock is expected to start practicing next week after returning from a thumb injury. The team hopes he'll be able to serve as serve as Brandon Allen's backup for 12 and 13 and then start the final 2 home games against Detroit and Oakland. I think that decision's not going to be made until you see what Drew Lock can do as a starter, because although I think, he was a 3rd, 4th round pick in the NFL draft, I want to say, Drew Lock. He was not obviously first. He was, I want to say he was a 2nd round pick. Okay. He did go in the 2nd. He went 42nd overall. I mean, you used the 2nd round pick on the kid. Maybe you see what he's worth. Maybe it's a Patrick Mahomes situation where he plays the last game of the year. You like him. Okay, he's going to be our starter for next year. People at home, sit down. I'm not comparing him to Patrick Mahomes. I'm just saying maybe then you name him the starter for next year. But at the same time, if Justin Herbert's there, I wouldn't go against saying, hey, let's draft Justin Herbert, and it's an open competition at that point, because whoever's the better quarterback, having the better quarterback is going to make you successful. My only question for you, because of how I have it played out, where Herbert's already off the board, does that mean if you're the Broncos, who would you go with? Would you go with Jalen Hurts or Jake Fromm here if Tua, Burrow,
Jalen Hurts?
So you would go with Hurts.
Jalen Hurts. I'll be honest with you. I've soured on Jake Fromm.
Okay. A lot of people have. There's a lot of people that don't even like. I love Jalen Hurts. I think he's going to rise. Mm-hmm. I've even flirted with the idea that he could be number 1 pick in the draft before Joe Burrow got on his rise. There's a lot of people that are not high on Jalen Hurts. Like, even McShay and Kuiper are like, he's good, but he's not a 1st-round talent, which I think is asinine, to quote Stephen A. Smith. It's not even asinine. It's asa-10, asa-11, asa-12.
That's funny.
To where I got Jalen Hurts in my 1st round. He will be in this draft, but, I mean, I look at it and I go, he would be the one that I look at, but, I mean, there are people that really the next 2 after Herbert are Fromm and Hurts, because I don't think Eason has done enough to overtake Jake Fromm. So you would, if you're going quarterback, you would go Jalen Hurts to the Broncos?
If I'm going quarterback, yes.
Yeah. Do you think that would be, let's put it this way, or if you're the Broncos and you're thinking that, do you try to trade back? Say, hey, let's trade back because Jalen Hurts here would be a reach. Let's trade back, accumulate some assets, take Jalen Hurts in the 1st round.
Possibly. Here's the thing that has me all confused, though, with all of this.
Go ahead.
And it's happening with the Broncos, or not happening with the Broncos right now.
Yeah.
Why are they not playing Drew Lock?
He's injured. He's got a thumb injury.
But they put him on injured reserve at the beginning of the season. He should be off by now.
Yeah, so how they have it here, according to the article that I had, according to 9 News in Denver, the thing that confuses me about it is...
Because Nick Foles went on injured reserve at the beginning of the... Didn't they put him on injured reserve? Didn't the Jaguars put him on injured reserve week 1 and he's able to come back?
He's off.
He was able to come back last week.
What they have down here is that the team hopes that Locke is expected to start practicing next week.
Okay.
Again, but he was expected to be the backup in week 12 and 13. So he's going to back up Brandon Allen, which it's like if he's healthy to play, just fucking put him out there. Exactly. So he's going to back up Allen for 2 weeks and then start the final two.
That is John Elway for being this, he knows quarterbacks. He's a dumbass. He's a dumbass. He doesn't know what the hell he's doing. He doesn't. I'm sorry. Denver, I'm sorry.
Is it a John Elway decision or is it a Vic Fangio decision?
No, it's a John Elway decision. Okay. It's a John Elway decision.
Because you're right. John Elway, love Vic Fangio. Love Vic. But John Elway is pulling the strings, especially with the quarterback.
He totally is. And why not try and find out what you've got in this guy right now? And I'm not saying one game's going to do it, but guess what?
Give him the opportunity.
5 to 7 games might do it.
It's not like you're trying to win games.
So if you have him and he goes in 5 games and you're thinking, I don't know. Okay, this would be really smart, John, is that you have a draft where it's going to be quarterback rich. Tons of really, really talented quarterbacks are going to be coming out. So why not try and see what you're able to get, and then if you're not sure if that's the guy, you've got an opportunity, but he won't do that.
So the last pick we got to look at, it's another team with dual picks, the Oakland Raiders. How I'm looking at it here in Oakland, because we're not going to talk about your pick later on. Of course, like I said, I got Jeff Okunda out of Ohio State, the cornerback. At number 16, I've got AJ Epenza. So they get 2 Big Ten guys to fit their 2 biggest needs of cornerback and edge rusher. Is this the right decision for the Raiders? I feel like in my mind, Okunda's a guy where it's like at 10, I put it down and I was like, fuck, am I giving them a gift? Because really, if this was a big board and not a draft, there's no way Okunda would be number 10. He would be higher than where I have him. I just don't think there's not a need, and there's not a need or a reason to go BPA that puts him above where I have him. And the Raiders would love to have him, and then with how the rest of the draft folds out, getting Epenza at 15, those should be the 2 positions that John Gruden and Mike Mayock go with. But who knows? They'll fall in love with some bumfuck guy, and we'll be like, who? Who is that? Like last year when it was Christian Wilkins? Was the guy they went with?
Yep.
Where it's like, all right, I love Christian Wilkins, but there's no reason why I would have taken him that high.
Especially the way that they were being all goofy and sending everyone home and stuff.
Yep. What is your idea with the Raiders when you look at, because now they've got the Bear pick and their own pick to make 2 in the first round?
So I think that what the Oakland Raiders would like is if they had a guy named Khalil Mack that they could draft and put on their team. They're still searching for him.
Because no one thought the Bears would be in the top. No one thought that the Raiders would have a top 10 pick.
No.
Because of the Bears. And that's the pick that they have that's in the top 10 right now is the Bears. So, I mean, you're right. Edge rushing's got to be number 1, but that's, like I said, another team in the top 10 searching for edge rushers. But if you look at my top 10, how many edge rushers are there? There's only 1 in Chase Young. So, I mean, that's like I said, that's going to be the most interesting thing as we move through this draft process. And I'll kind of ask you this is, do you think it's going to be the former and it's just like, well, teams need it. We just don't see any because there's only one in the top 10. Or do we see guys like a Penza, like a Yatir Gross-Matos, where it's like maybe they shouldn't be top 10 picks, but teams take them anyways because of their need for edge rushers at the next level? Do you think it's going to be teams reach for edge rushers this year, or just teams just don't take edge rushers even though it's probably their number 1 or number 2 need on their board?
I don't really know. I'll be honest with you. I really don't know, and I really don't know with the Raiders here either. Is that I think that they've probably got to go defense. They've got to get somebody who can continue to be in there and stop the run. We talked about it on What's Your Fantasy. The Oakland Raiders have been much better against the run this year than they have the past, but maybe that's also, maybe they need to get somebody who's able to help stop the pass. I mean, they're getting gashed usually all the time.
Clelin Ferrell, not Christian Wilkins. I knew that was wrong. It was Clelin Ferrell that they reached on it for. But go on. I'm sorry. I cut you off.
But that's maybe where the Oakland Raiders should be looking. Maybe they should be looking at someone in the secondary. Maybe they should be looking at cornerback. Maybe that's something that they would be looking at instead. I'm just looking at it from a team need. They need help in the secondary. Yeah,
they do. And that's why I definitely was looking at Jeff Okunda for them. Last year, just as a refresher, they did go defense with Abram and Farrell, who I mistakenly had said Christian Wilkins earlier. And then they did take Josh Jacobs also. So they went defense, offense, defense with the order of their picks. But this is where you guys come in. Let us know what you think down below in the comment section. A new edition of going through all the top 10 picks this year. Very different than what we did last year, but kind of taking what we do on the fast break because we love it and you guys love hearing about your teams, especially the ones that are extra needy in the top 10. But Brandon and I will continue further just looking at some teams, spotlighting some. We won't go through every pick for the entire draft. We'll be here all night. But let us know what you guys think down below in that comment section.